turn over a volume, do you?
No, but we just
Right, just whenever you need it.
Okay, the time is now past 1 o'clock, so we are live streaming and I'm opening up the regulatory committee for today. Welcome everybody. We'll get on to the front end then. We do have some apologies today. So, yep. We have Councillor Michael Deaker, Councillor Kevin Malcolm and Councillor Marion Hobbs. Somebody care to move those? Councillor Wilson seconded, Councillor Noon, all in favour? Aye. Against, carried. We do have some staff and we have some presenting of reports. So Richard, if you introduce your team as we go along the way, that would be great. About to do conflicts of interest, yep. Just members are reminded of the need to stand aside from decision making if conflicts arise at the time, but does anybody want to declare their conflict and what it is at this point?
I understand there'll be discussion on Plan Change 7 and deemed and permits and resource consent renewals. I will stand out of that as I've got one, or our farm has one.
Sure, yep.
Same as her.
Thanks. Okay, great. When that comes up with the first report, if it comes up in that, then we'll understand that. Thank you. Any other conflicts of interest we need to understand? No? Okay, thank you. No public forum today. The minutes of the 11th of March have been circulated. Somebody care to move those? Councillor Wilson, seconded Councillor Hope. So moved and seconded as a true and accurate record. Everybody agree? No? Agreed, thank you. Okay, actions then as a result of other meetings we've had. Okay, so we've got wallabies there in progress. What is that one? And about updating, I think. So, okay, that's fine. That's in progress. The Harbour Master. So we've had a hearing and we can update you on that. Councillor Calvert.
Just because I don't understand this, these actions here, which aren't of course in this agenda, will turn up in the minutes of this agenda, will they?
Yeah, they're...
Otherwise there isn't a record of what actions. Oh, it says will be updated. So
if there are updates as a result of this meeting, that's what happens,
the
and they're in the
turn
minutes.
Up in the minutes. Yeah, cool.
Thank you. Yep, that's right. Oh, is that wrong, Liz? Well, sorry. Okay, Liz will tell us what the process is.
No, so I don't make any updates to the minutes. I mean, to the actions in the minutes, unless something has been talked about during the meeting.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
So what I'm sort of asking is, if it says here will be updated on its outstanding actions, and during this meeting we get updated on it, that update should be in the minutes for next time.
That's good. Yeah. Thank you. Yep. Were we hearing about that? Compliance monitoring in progress. Monitoring plan, which we'll also be talking about in this meeting. So that's great. Sorry, back to that. Actions we have done, and we are moving on to the first paper, which is the quarterly regulatory activity report, Richard, and possible conflicts of interest. So we'll maybe hear how we handle the paper,
so I thought,
so that those can understand the structure.
The paper covers everything within regulatory, but to assist Councillors Wilson and Keller, that if we start with Joe and consents and cover off the questions that have been received on Plan Change 7 and deemed permit processing, and then move on to the rest of it after that, and that'll allow Gary and Kate to come back into the room.
Right, sounds good. Thank you.
You may be excused.
Thank you.
In your hands, Richard.
Okay, thanks. So as well as the updates contained within the report, there were some questions circulated by Councillor Laws by email that we said we would provide some comment on during the week, and we also Joe also circulated some data on the current status of deemed permit processing, and we can take questions on those if there are any. But I thought just to kick off, Joe will just provide a little bit of an overview in response to those questions, particularly around the weighting of Plan Change 7 and our current approach to processing those applications.
Great.
Yes, so in terms of the updated numbers, those were as circulated earlier in the week. So Plan Change 7 was re-notified by the EPA on Monday, and I think you were provided an update about that yesterday. So the weighting that we give to Plan Change 7 at the moment when we're considering decisions really does depend on a series of factors that comes from court cases. So we're directed by how much weight we apply to those objectives and policies through what the Environment and High Court tells us. So that criteria, and I'll be able to provide this to you, is how far through the plan making process Plan Change 7 is. So that's how far through Schedule 1 the plan changes, any circumstances of injustice that may arise to the applicant, the extent to which a new measure or the absence of one implements a coherent pattern of objectives and policies within the plan, and then whether or not there's been a significant change in council policy and the new provisions are in accordance with Part 2 of the RMA. So when considering how much weight to apply to the policies within Plan Change 7, we filter it through those. So again, you've got to think of Plan Change 7 as being on a scale. On the other side of that are the policies within our operative plan that has been in existence since it was notified. And we've got to weigh those up and the application up against that. So obviously Plan Change 7 is early in the process, but it does then also introduce a new and coherent lot of policies within our plan and gives effect to the RMA. So there is a lot to balance up within that. Like with any profession, planners have different views on how much weight should be applied, and also it depends on the specific nature of the application. But those are the factors that we have to consider in that situation. Another question that was asked is what weight is being given to Plan Change 7 by commissioners. So we've only had one decision on a hearing that considered Plan Change 7. So that hearing was held the day after Plan Change 7 was notified. And the decision was released just after. So in that context, very little weight was given to Plan Change 7 because the application had been in for a significant period of time. There were considered to be circumstances of injustice because of the fact that Plan Change 7 was just notified the day before. So that's the only one that we've had a hearing and decision on that I can talk about in relation to that question. And then the final question was a hypothetical around if an application was lodged prior to Plan Change 7 being notified and called in by the minister. Does that mean old water rules apply in terms of a consent or just those in Plan Change 7? So at the moment, both rules apply. So because Plan Change 7 isn't yet fully operative, we're working under both sets of rules. So our regional plan water still applies and Plan Change 7 still applies. But what Plan Change 7 does introduce is a controlled activity rule, which is a shorter and cleaner consent pathway for applicants. So those were all of the questions that were there, but I'm happy to take any others.
Councillor Scott, followed by Councillor Calvert and then Councillor Laws.
I've got a number of questions. The first one is slightly offside in terms of what you were just talking about, but it's about the deemed permits and the number of deemed permits.
Yes.
And you sent out an email yesterday, earlier this week, where you actually noted that it was a total of 585 and that there were 23 that were cancelled. There's currently 357, there's expired 45 and 360. And I was trying to compare that to the number in the report, which says there's 250.
Yes.
When I read the report, and seriously, you know, like, if I can't understand it, I wonder how other people can understand it. And I don't mean regularly, but
I take the point.
you know, because I'm getting information from. So when I read the public report, you know, I read 253 deemed permits, and the comment that actually 90 of them are to do with an operation of a power company. So I deduct that off that, and then I get like 163, and I'm thinking, well, you know, we're getting there. But then when I read your other email, and I'm thinking, well, is that actually the case? Is it? So 2 questions there, just in terms of what is the clearer picture? Like, we're being accused of not doing a job. As a matter of interest, how far through the process do you think we are in terms of percentage deemed permits? Like, are we 50% of the way? Are we 80% of the way in terms of all the deemed permits and the process that's been going on over the last number of years?
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't feel comfortable putting a percentage on it, but in terms of the total that's listed there, those are the total that we have had. So that is, yeah, so if you look at the cancelled, current, expired, surrendered, my understanding on that was circulated was that was our starting point.
That's the starting point.
Yeah,
the
yeah, and sorry,
500
this
was the starting
yeah,
point.
yeah. So this here is just a new report that has just been developed to provide information through to the ministry, and so we are tweaking that as we go. The data that is there is pulled from the exact same place that my numbers are pulled from for my regulatory report.
Okay.
It's just that the regulatory report has further context around it, which is not included within the report.
So in terms of the raw numbers, snapshot. Like the 500, and now we're sort of halfway in terms of numbers, there. But in fact we've still got the 90 for the power company.
Yes,
so we are making some progress, but it's obviously ballooning out near the end. Okay, and then we got this anomaly in terms of the balance of the policy that we consider, and particularly in relation to the time issue.
I wouldn't say it's ballooning out in terms of my team's workload. I'm very comfortable with the resourcing that we have in place to deal with that.
Thank you.
I'll just make a point to that too. We had a good meeting with Okaha following the letters that were received to just reassure them that the resources and the plan that Joe's put in place, we're very comfortable we can manage the applications that are coming in, that we need to process. And when one thing that we are reliant on is people engaging with us to make the applications. We can't force them to apply. All we can do is encourage them to give themselves the most amount of time ahead of the date to ensure they have a continuity of supply of water. But it's on them to get a suitable application to us to process. So the ball is firmly in their court to engage with us to start with, and then we just need to be ready to receive them and process them.
Okay, no, thank you. Now, we talked about the time period, being a balance, through the chair, apologies, between the new plan and the operative plan. Who is actually driving that? That is the minister that's driving the new plan, or the potential to actually call in all these deemed permits. If the minister decided that he would like them considered under the new plan, that becomes the minister's prerogative or responsibility,
So I understand that the plan process is now in the hands of the EPA, so that's out of our hands. Any decision to call in permits for processing, that sits not with us.
And
oh, sure, Ms. Gardner just walked
so my question to the CE, do we at some point, because we actually give a view on that balance?
Yes, you could. What I was just going to say in reference to what Jo has said, she's exactly right. The minister makes a decision on whether or not something should be called in. You, of course, could also make a decision about whether you wanted to request that he called in the permits or not.
Yes.
So I'm not suggesting you do or you don't. I'm just making sure you have all the information, which is that if you thought that there was any merit in doing so, you have that option available to you.
Yeah, I mean, like we've just finished the session where, we talked about being future focused, and I think I think that line might have been deleted in the end. But
we'll keep going.
Sorry, you asked me another question, which was about the weight. And whether or not at some point we would provide a view of that.
Yeah.
So the weight is always changing because of the progress that Plan Change 7 makes through.
Yeah.
But I would fully expect that there will be relatively quick progress because it's gone straight to court. So there won't be the usual delay after submissions close where you go through council hearing and then appeals to court and then hear it again and all of that. So we're cutting out that council hearing piece by being heard straight by the court.
Yeah.
So that means more weight is likely to be given to the plan faster.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Important point that you raised there about the calling in and how that would look, just so people understand in discussing this, because they are deemed permits, so they're different from RMA consents at the moment, which you could call in. So is it something that could happen when someone lodges it, rather than something that could be initiated for all of the outlying ones prior to 2021? Calling in wouldn't necessarily be easy, I wouldn't think, given that they're deemed permits and pretty much chattels.
Yeah, they're replaced with RMA water permits, so the provisions of the RMA do apply to them.
But only when they apply?
Yeah.
Like when the person
Yeah, so
applies
they'd be
for a
applying
consent?
as a new permit, not familiar with the grounds of calling in ones that are not currently in for an application, but certainly once they were in, or the intent was there for them to be in, then yes.
Yep, okay, sorry, Councillor Calvert.
Sort of second question first, because related to that lot. When the talk is of calling them in, is the assumption of calling them in the ones that will be due in 2021? Or
Answer you just gave, I think.
Yeah, I'm not too
I mean, is it the balance of the ones that haven't been processed and turned from something into a new resource consent, or is it?
Can't call them in until they've been lodged.
And it also depends on
No,
what
but you
type.
can't call on the ones that have already been decided either.
No.
So that's what I was asking.
Oh, right.
I mean, we've already dealt with quite a few of them. There's no suggestion that somebody would relitigate or revisit those. So it's the idea of once something is lodged, then something different would happen with them.
That's right.
So only for the leftover ones, as it were.
Yeah, good idea. Sorry, we were just saying that it would be a potential idea to put forward a paper on this as well, because it is quite a big topic, but that does not prevent you from asking your question, so sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
So that makes it more important that we get clear the status of how many have already been done, how many have still to be done, and those sorts of things. And what confused me a wee bit is I compared this email with the report we sent off to the Minister in April. And that report, which, I got confused between the two of them, and that's probably me as much as anything. But when it says current, for example, currently contains data for 585 deemed permits, and cancelled current, expired, surrendered total. Current 357. That's bigger than the current number in our report to the Minister. How can that be growing, the number of current deemed permits be growing between April and now?
It shouldn't be, and I don't have that report from April in front of me, but I can certainly look into be sure that the two currents are the same terminology.
Sometime later, not boring everybody else with it, just try and get my head round.
That's fine. Yeah.
How much is of which sort are left to be done, and those things, and how those numbers didn't quite sort of. Cool.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Perhaps. Would you like to comment on how we could refine this information?
Oh no, I think Joe and others are better able to do that than I. But what I did want to remind you of in regards to the call-in is that I'm not sure that I'm not saying that I have a view, but what I am saying is that potentially the scope could be deemed permits and all water permits that are expiring in the same time, and they're two slightly different things, because Plan Change 7 covers both.
Hey, Councillor Calvert, have you finished your questions?
Yes, as I say, those
Yep.
were the, I can figure out the rest back in my head by.
Yep, Councillor Laws.
I apologise ahead of time for being specific, but I have still got little gaps in my knowledge, so I'm hoping that you'll fill it in for me. At the moment, you're saying that there was a one commissioner's report, or one commissioner judgment
Decision that
since
we've
Plan Change
received.
7.
Yep.
And my understanding of that is that they granted a consent for, was it 20, 25 years?
20-something years, yes, off
Yeah.
the top of my head.
Yeah. And they didn't give an awful lot of weight at all to the Plan Change 7, which I think you've confirmed.
Yeah, the specific wording will be in the decision, but there was something around limited weight was given to Plan Change 7, which is reflective of the timing of that decision.
Right. That's the one commissioner's call you've had in so far.
Yes.
How many are currently before commissioners?
One.
Is that last chance?
Yes, but because it's before a commissioner, I'm not going to talk about it
No,
any
but
further.
that is the last chance irrigation.
Yes, but I'm not going to talk about
Submission.
it any further. Yep.
All right. Okay. And when are you expecting a decision on that to be available to your consents team?
Like with any decision, it needs to be within 15 working days of the close of the hearing.
And that hearing is still live at the moment.
No, I understand it has closed.
So you'll be able to come back here in 15 working days from now, roughly, and be able to tell us what happened in last chance irrigation. Is that right?
Yes, I could, but only if it is if necessary for you guys to understand that.
Well, no, it's going to be very important, isn't it? Because this is going to be another case along that continuum that there'll be some case law built up that the commissioners will be following.
Yes, Sarah.
The sliding scale,
I think
too,
you
isn't
should
there, of
maybe just,
timeline?
perhaps if you ask me the questions and we can,
Sorry, I'm just very limited as to what I can say about that at the moment.
yeah.
No, see, I'm not asking for any of the detail. I'm just trying to work out.
Yeah.
We can provide a copy.
We can provide a copy of the
Sure,
commissioner's
yeah.
decision when it's received. And
Yeah, that's fine.
That would be great.
Yeah.
If you
So
could
if we-
see,
yeah.
because then we'll get a
Yeah.
practical understanding. Yeah.
It's just I can't
Yep.
comment
And the
at the
rationale, I
moment.
haven't finished yet. And the rationale why. That's good. That's good.
Who's the chair?
So the Okaha letter, in essence, your answer to that question is no. We have the resources. We're doing what we're doing. We're on track. There's no need to call in.
No.
Well, sorry, we did just hear from the CE that that would be a governance decision, so.
Yes, it is a governance decision.
Yeah.
So to be clear, the discussion we had around OCAR was specifically related to that comment about our ability to process. That is all.
Yeah, well,
The-
that's the only thing I'm interested in.
Yeah, and we are comfortable that we can process the applications that will be received.
But please don't conflate that with the staff view on call-in.
Yeah, but that'll be a governance decision, as you say.
Well, yes, but I'm
Yes.
just saying you put two things in the one sentence and I'm asking you not to do that.
Yep, no, we've got that. That's good. So we haven't progressed something on that as a council view. We've got that straight. Great. Yep, we could if we wanted to.
Yeah. The four filters that you go, so I guess let's just say, for arguments or hypothetical sake, when a commissioner's judgment comes in, sorry, I don't understand the nervousness here, so I'm starting to get a bit nervous myself now.
We do need to stick to what was on the agenda
Yeah, but
as
it is-
well,
but
so,
no,
and
but
so that
it-
people can be prepared. But yep, that's good.
Well, I
yep.
have sent the questions out, so they should
Okay,
have
good.
set out the reference. So when the commissioner's judgments come in, obviously that informs your consents team. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we do read and have a look at those decisions to see what they have considered and how that relates to our interpretation of our plans, and also if they've pointed out anything that we may or may not have gotten right. So yes, we do look at those.
Except remembering that it is only a point in time and there is that sliding scale of weight. So what I'm saying is that, yes, a decision might be made and a term might be given at a point in time based on the weight afforded to Plan Change 7. However, next time you consider an application, that weight may well have shifted.
But it's not just due
Right,
to...
we're not having a debate here.
No,
so
I'm
are
asking
we-
the question.
Yeah,
But it's not
right.
just due to time in the continuum, is it? There are other questions, for example, and you've given those 4. Do the commissioners use any other assessments apart from those? For example, would they say, I don't think Plan Change 7's coherent? I mean, would they make a critical judgment, for example, of the plan change and say, I don't know what that means or I require further definition?
I'm making a decision on a consent, not a
Yeah,
policy.
they haven't. It is a decision on a consent, and they need to consider those objectives and policies from
As
Plan
they
Change
are.
7 as they are written on the page. So when they are applying weight, they will use that criteria that I spoke about earlier.
Oh, that's
Right,
good.
and
Yep.
finally,
Next
wait on,
question.
that's all
Yep.
good, yep. And then, can we get an update for every committee meeting of where we are, please? So one of the frustrations of this was, I think the last thing we got was September, might have even been before that.
These meetings are every 2 or 3 months, so we'll commit to providing a monthly update rather than waiting, because it will move, but particularly as we get closer to April next year, it will move quicker. So I think we can provide an update on the metrics outside of a committee cycle, just so people are up to date on where things are at.
Right. And finally, when you're doing the consents, has there been, for example, you've had one commissioner, who makes the decision that will appeal that to the Environment Court? Is that you, Richard? So let's just say you get a judgment, you don't agree with the commissioner. Who makes the assessment that you'll go off to the Environment Court and appeal that commissioner's decision?
So if we may, just that we have the new staff delegations, so I'd have to reflect to the new delegations to confirm a response to that one. Yeah.
Isn't it, Sarah, in consultation with Andrew?
the chair.
Yeah, I think that's where we
just wanted
landed.
to-
It
yeah.
was the
That is me in
change that was
consultation
made.
with the
Yeah.
chair.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep,
do that.
Sarah.
And finally, one thing, Plan Change 7. Plan Change 7 is currently before the EPA. What will they do next with it, please? So what's the process after it's with the EPA?
They will send it to the court
They've
with
just
the
notified
submissions.
With
Yeah.
the submissions that have already been received by the ORC?
No, with those submissions
And
and
more.
the submissions received through this current notification period.
Right. So just wanted to clarify that. All the submissions that went on Plan Change 7 when it was coming to us
Are included.
automatically go to the
Yes,
environment.
they do.
Yep, they have been handed over to the EPA.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on that matter?
I'll make a comment. I'm not sure whether this is going to be helpful or not, but I'll give it a crack.
Yep.
The way I think of Plan Change 7, it's on its path to becoming lawfully established. And it's currently somewhere here. And as those water permit applications come in, this is mobile, and those decision makers, commissioners, whatever, will at that time, and the chief has said it and Joe has said it, about how much weight they give Plan Change 7. In their decisions, the key part of a resource consent for a water permit is essentially the reasons for the decision. And if you go to that probably is about a page, an A4 page, and they hone in on why they've made that certain decision. So that is the key element to be able to get inside the thinking of the commissioners. So
And
I
that's
just
what I'm
wanted-
asking for. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to get, is that right?
Yeah, so they're not going to make a judgment on how good or bad the policy is. They are going to implement the policy based on the way it's written on the application. So I just wanted to share that. Yeah, I was only trying to be helpful. Sorry.
Oh, that's good. And I guess as well as the sliding weight, they assess each on its own merits too, and impacts on the, the surrounding
I've sent the
environment.
page that confused me through to you.
Okay. Right, well, we got through that one. There was some discussion of whether or not we need further paper but we got to the point where we're going to have monthly updates, so we'll be informed of decisions, significant decisions that come forward. So I think we're probably all happy with that at this point. Yeah, great. Okay. On to the paper then. We have Harbour Master as our first one. Or Rich. Oh, sorry. Great idea. Get those councillors back, and then we can move into it.
But if we've got this report set up now,
Welcome back.
So you've finished the meeting?
No, we've got the important matter of Harbour Master at the moment. So, Richard, do you want to just run through and structure it and introduce the team? And yeah, Harbour Master seems to be the first topic.
Yes, certainly. I mean, we'll just take the general, the update as read and move on to questions. And obviously, if there's any other general consenting questions, we can take those. But we can kick off with Steve and any questions around the Harbour Master function.
So we've recently as well had a hearing last week on that last point 10 of merging essentially navigational bylaws, Lake Dunstan and ORC, and some other little changes as well. So
10 for me.
Any questions? Councillor Hope?
Okay, through the chair. Just wanted to ask you on paragraph 9, you've got, which is really good to see, you're going to more remote locations like Pulbun and Lake Mahanarangi, which is really good. I travel that road often. You've got further locations to improve next year. Are you able just to enlighten us where they'll be? Are you going all round? What's the general understanding with what you would call remote in our end of the woods?
Yes, certainly. It's as we all know, it's a vast area to cover. So in the nearly 3 years that I've been in role, we've not managed to get to some of those more remote locations. And as people are starting to realise that we've got a Harbour Masters department, it's fully functioning, we get more and more inquiries from members of the public. And those appear to be, over last season, most certainly, more remote locations. So we had a few queries at the Pulburn. We had a small boat sink at the Mannerburn. We've had event applications for some of those locations as well. So there's still one or two places. The Mannerburn we haven't yet got to. The Moss Swamp we haven't got to. And I've no doubt there's one or two others. But we're looking for the larger areas that people will go and recreationally boat over the decent weather periods. And I was quite surprised to see, ramps, signage, access. The amount of people who access those locations it's not vast, but it is a place people access to go recreational boating. So anything we can do around improvement of signage, education, and we've got some issues. I guess there are a large amount of rocks that appear in the Pulburn from time to time when the levels rise and fall. But I think there's one or two issues up there we could help improve for navigational safety reasons. So that's where we currently are.
And just one more further question. The signs that you see, the water safety signage is consistently what you see down at South Otago or Pulburn and Mahanarangi, all the same. Is that correct?
We've had some new navigational safety signage developed in the past couple of years, and that is consistent with the national safety campaign message. 6 really key points, which it pretty much goes on all of the signage across the land. It's in the bylaws consistently, and any sort of paraphernalia that we're handing out as educational aids as well.
And just on that, if someone had to phone you, they saw something untowards, or there was an emergency, do we have that sort of information on that too?
The Harbour Masters webpage on there through our website, and the contact number on there as well.
And I don't mean to be disrespectful here. Why I ask that is you've got to remember places like Mahanarangi, you don't have great cell phone coverage service. So if there's an 0800 number or a number, somebody could ring you.
It has the emergency contact details on there as well. So you're dialing 111 in an emergency anyway. And essentially I come second or third on the list in a major emergency like that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions around Harbour Master? No. very impressed with the work that has been going on, and like you've talked about the moorings and markings, and we've been getting out across the whole region. Massive improvement. So Gary and I did that hearing last week and had a wee catch up with you, which was really positive. So thank you.
Thank you. I think it's one more thing, if I may. We placed some visitors moorings. I think about 12 months ago we had a discussion in here about visitors moorings, and we were able to go through it's 2 moorings in the harbour here, and they've been very well accessed and utilised over this summer, and they've proven a good asset, and they're going down very well with people who come in visiting the harbour, a safe haven, and being used really well. So it was a good move on our part to do that.
Really good. Great can-do attitude, I think. Thank you. Consents there. We have talked about some consents, but there are other consents there if anybody wants to ask any questions in that area. Yeah, some bigger ones have come in recently, which is good to note there. Nothing to ask? No. We've already talked about deemed permit replacements and public inquiries there. Any other questions? Then I'll just open the whole paper up. Taken as read otherwise.
Oh, you were talking about the whole report?
Yeah, we will open the whole report up.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Laws, you've got a question?
Sure. I've got a couple. Investigations and enforcement, paragraphs 33 to 35. You seem to be indicating that you've got a staff shortage. If you're not attending your calls, then you clearly have. And that would erode public confidence in the ORC being able to manage pollution responses in my area, and I know that from personal experience. So, what are we going to do about it?
So there's a couple of things there. Yes, it is indicating that we are struggling to manage the volume of complaints we're getting. There was 2 additional FTEs, and Nick and Sarah can correct me if I'm wrong, in the last annual plan prior to this one that provided some dedicated incident response resource. What we're finding is that in the busy times, or particularly when those staff are tied up investigating large cases such as wastewater treatment plants, that incident response is falling to our compliance staff, who are spending more and more time doing incident response and less time doing compliance monitoring work. And that is an issue in my mind. So in terms of what we're going to do about it, we are trying to get some better data, which is similar to what we talked about this morning, to inform what we need from a staff perspective for a particular level of service that will be a governance decision to make. And we need to bring that back to you to show how many calls we're getting, how many we're able to respond to, and what staff changes or priorities might look like to enable us to respond to more. At the moment, it's a priority-based decision around how many we get to and at what time. In what time, sorry.
I'm interested if, since COVID, there has been a diminution increase. It's negligible, it's the same number of complaints related to these when compared to this time, say, last year.
Do you have that type of data?
So we had 109 in March, 81 in April, and 123 in May.
Okay.
So it was quieter during lockdown, which is probably not surprising given there wasn't a lot of activity going on.
Yeah.
And then it's just started to move. May, when everyone was getting back into normal, whatever that is, then it was back up at 123.
So what are the particular calls, and I've given it some examples of, these are the abatement notices of infringement. What are the calls you're unable to meet? I mean, what's number one at the top? Is it odour? Is it burning? What's the...
I couldn't say, Councillor, without. I'd have to go back and have a look at it. So there's any number of calls around, discharges. What the team are looking at in terms of a priority for response is what's the potential environmental effect of the incident that's been reported, and if that is potentially very high, we will find staff to attend. We'll pull compliance staff, or we will find people to get there. If it is something that may be a technical non-compliance but might not be an immediate risk to the environment, then it's likely that we will reprioritise that and either attend when we have staff who can attend, if it's an ongoing non-compliance, or we do speak to everybody, or we will phone and say we don't have the ability to respond at this time. If it continues to be a problem, call us back, and we'll obviously have a record of it.
District councils, TAs, mine did, used to employ people on when they had a shortage of staff. So they used to, for example, security guards, and they used to mandate them, for example, for noise in particular, or even for dog control on occasions. Is that a particular option that you've got here?
We could employ contractors, provided they're appropriately trained and warranted to undertake particular activities. I mean, there's a number of options available. Again, I guess we've just got to understand what the need is and then have a conversation about what the level of services we're aiming for.
I think it's a wider conversation which will be signalled in the dairy inspections
and certainly
a wider program of what we're actually going to invest in for the best outcomes is what you're trying to say.
That's right.
And whilst we may not attend to every complaint, we don't know whether or not what the nature of those complaints that we're not attending, and are they significant? Are they likely to have significant effects on the environment? Possibly not, some of them, but at the moment we have a requirement to attend to them. We're not. That's valid, and bringing it forward is totally valid, and that's what you're saying you're going to do so that we can assess our resources going forward. So great, we've got that message. You've got it in hand. We can make the decision. Thank you.
I don't think we were being told that they're not being attended to. Exactly, they're not being at the time attended by dedicated staff.
We don't physically attend everything, but we certainly do attend to every call we receive in some way.
Good message. Thank you. You assess them. Yep. Good. Any other questions then, Councillor Laws?
Well, that sort of flows into the air plan enforcement issue, because if you look at, and I recognise the difficulty, and we probably don't have enough policy to guide you at the moment, to be honest with you. But when you get somebody complaining, for example, about the next door neighbour has decided to burn wet wood and it's completely besmirched the next door's, and half the neighbourhood as well. And let's just say it's Cromwell, just as an example. Do you have this? But these things are usually outside of 8 to 5. So is there a mechanism that's available to you there, or you're still hemmed into the Monday to Friday 8 to 5?
No, we have a 24-hour pollution response, but again, they don't attend every call received out of hours. So if we had a one-off complaint around a smoky chimney, they wouldn't attend that as a matter of course. If it was a repeat on the same address, they would engage in that. But we do have the ability to respond 24/7, and they're regularly out after hours and in the weekends.
Thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Apologies, Madam Chair, I had to go out for various reasons. Have you had any discussion on this independent report in the attachment?
That's now.
It's now?
Is this the compliance metrics report? Yeah, that's part of this report.
Yeah. And, has there been any discussion on it?
No, not yet. Go for it.
Okay, so it's really just, are there any learnings from this report? So, for example, I can see, for example, that councils have well codified a response to managing consent monitoring and incident response, but very little for permanent activities. Was one thing that I've read. Also, it says in relation to enforcement orders, very little use of enforcement orders, and they struggle to explain why. Are there any learnings from this report that we put into doing our business better?
Yes.
Good. Are you able to talk us through that via Madam Chair?
Look, similar to the process you talked before about rationalising.
Not in great. I can't talk through in great detail. And Rachel Brown, who's our compliance team leader, and Dunedin might add to this. She'll certainly be supporting me in the dairy report, but she might jump in here as well. There's a number of things in there that we can use to inform the compliance plan, or that we've committed to returning to this committee with, that's being developed at the moment. The other thing that is highlighted in here is that our current system for tracking workflow is not giving us the level of data we need to make good decisions. So you'll see a few tables in here where Otago hasn't been able to report on things. And one of those things is when we get an incident, do we physically attend or not? We don't have a way at the moment of being able to report on that. And those sort of things are very important when we're trying to plan for resources and things. So there's a discussion at the moment around system improvements to give us better visibility of what it is we're doing. But these reports, in terms of the practice from other regional councils around the country, and the meetings, the compliance monitoring compliance monitoring and enforcement interest group meet regularly. Martin King goes to those and feeds back on what other regional councils are doing in this space to inform our own practice development.
Right, so you'll be coming back to council with some of the learnings and insights and the path going forward.
Yep.
Fantastic.
We'll have input onto the compliance plan.
Correct.
Yeah, and that'll feed into the LTP. So yeah, good chance. Thank you. Any other questions then on this paper, Councillor Laws?
Oh, I mean the obvious one, and that's Clutha District Council. It's just an appalling report. I don't think I've ever seen anything so bad.
Right, yeah, we'll just interrupt you there now that it is in public excluded, proposed. There's a small note there that's right in this report, but yeah.
Changed it.
We've been communicating.
Oh, you have a printed out copy, sorry,
Yes.
of previous one, yeah.
So
It was on my not in my public excluded at all.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Well, just maybe, Richard, if you explain.
Yeah, look, that was apologies for that late change yesterday, but because that matter is currently before the court, it is an update for councillors and public excluded. So we are going to have the discussion.
You can have full and frank discussion.
Yeah.
Sure, thanks. Thankfully, no media here then.
Yeah.
Okay, sure, thanks, Tom.
Thanks.
You don't actually know if there's media here or not.
Great. Okay, no more questions on this paper then.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Madam Chair, sorry, I do have a question. Sorry, just going back to this enforcement policy, and because we essentially were the only regional council identified without an enforcement policy in the metrics.
We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
I doubt you should hear me.
Now we certainly can't. With regards to not having an enforcement policy, and we were the only regional council in New Zealand not to have one, I just wonder whether there's an impediment when we go through an enforcement process, whether that potentially can come back and be used as defence for the appellant.
No, because the enforcement we take is under the RMA. The policy is just around the resource and the approach we take, but the matter in terms of the decision we make on an infringement or an abatement or a prosecution is separate from any policy that council.
Yeah, so it's just an internal policy that we have as an organisation. Okay, thank you. Apologies for the breakage.
Thank
I think
you.
it probably just
That'll
slots
be
back in.
Easy to fix, yeah.
I'll do that later.
Okay, so we have some recommendations just to receive the report and note the update report from the regulatory group. So somebody care to move those together, seconded together, all in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried, thank you. Oh, sorry, just get back to the agenda here. Okay, so report on dairy inspections is the next one. Thank you, Steve. I imagine you're probably not wanting to talk about dairy inspections. Who would like to introduce this one?
Look, I will, Richard. So this is just a report similar to the wastewater treatment plant report. We communicated earlier to the committee that we would provide updates by function on particular things per meeting, and this was the next one that we committed to reporting on. It is quite a high level report, but we can obviously take questions if there's specifics within it. The one thing I would flag is that now we have Plan Change 8 notified and the upcoming changes to the NES, our monitoring of farms in the future will look very different, and we will have to do more than just dairy, and there will be more consent monitoring involved rather than permitted activity monitoring, which is what dairy is. So there is a lot of, or that we had a brief discussion on that yesterday, in yesterday's committee meeting around the implementation plan for Plan Change 8 and the NES, and this will be a large component of it for compliance. But I think it's important that we do just capture this most recent dairy permitted activity dairy season, just so we've got a record of how that went.
Seems to have gone fairly well, is that correct?
Yes, yeah. Look, from a staff perspective, they had high levels of compliance and good engagement when they were on farm and meeting. Yeah.
Okay, we do have some questions. We will be reminded that the compliance plan will look at those matters that you've talked about as well. We actually had Councillor Scott, then Councillor Calvert.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your report. There's positive news in relation to the relatively high level of compliance. Looking forward, and in relation to Plan Change 8 in particular, I've just got a number of comments. The first one is actually, if you go to paragraph number 17 here, just noting that there's a number of potential issues identified on site visits. These issues can form the basis of future education material, and you talk about landowners not being clear on the definition of a river. They don't necessarily know where the tile drains are. The owners are not providing share milkers with tools to enable compliance, use of high-rate irrigators, lack of foul-safe irrigators, and adequate infrastructure on farms. And when I read that, I'm thinking, actually, with all those issues, how did they achieve the relatively high levels of compliance? And then if I flick to page 105, and a big thank you to this page 105 must be the compliance sheet that is taken by our representatives to dairy farms.
The attachment, yes.
I mean, a huge thing. For the number of years that I've been on council, we've struggled to get this information, and this is, and thank you. Just in terms of, it's one thing to say there's a high level of compliance, but what does that actually sort of mean? And when I go through this, as I understand it, if there's a leak in the effluent pond liner, that's something that's significant, but it's not on your sheet. You've raised the issue in terms of tile drains, in terms of the ability to go from your paddock into the river. So are there any, glaring anomalies that are being addressed in the next iteration to give us some type of context when we talk about
the
high
metrics the
compliance?
correct ones, or could they be different, I suppose, isn't it, into the future? And
So what are the gaps that are in this process that we're going to be working on in the future to give us a bit of a context to actually how much confidence we can have in terms of the high compliance at this point?
Richard's got that, yeah.
Oh, I do.
I think it might be what you talked about earlier.
Yeah, it's the fundamental change we'll go through is that we will be going from monitoring of permitted activities to a consent monitoring based compliance program that will have a number of conditions that need to be complied with, which will encourage the owner, the landowner or the farmer to engage with the process. Whereas at the moment, the permitted activity that they're there and operating as of right, and then we come along and we're checking off with permitted rules that are not very clear. A consent that's issued with clear conditions that are drafted, that gives us a reason to be there and engaging, and we can obviously engage on the matters within the consent, but also broader farm management matters. It'll be a very different monitoring program to what we've got at the moment.
No, but I mean, some of them are obvious. to give you a bit of a hand, is the changes that are on Plan Change 8.
Yeah,
You know,
so that's
we're
right.
saying,
I think that's
we're,
what
we're
you're
saying, you know, the effluent ponds
Yes.
have to be of a certain standard.
Yeah.
Some farms don't have effluent ponds.
No.
Yeah, you know, some farms, as you pointed out, don't know where the tile drains are. Some farms have effluent ponds, but they're not working because
Yeah.
they leak.
Yeah.
You know, but we've been masquerading for as long as the ORC's been here, saying, oh, there's high compliance, but on a very narrow configuration.
I think it's important to recognise though that they have to comply with the plan framework that we've got in place,
Yeah.
and we're acknowledging that they are doing that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we do that.
Yes.
What you know that's what this report is. It doesn't talk about anything broader than
Yeah.
what you see.
Yeah.
So
the
we
metrics
can't.
for now, aren't they? But into the future, you said before that we're going to need very different metrics, and it's going to be across much broader than dairy farming too. So
Yeah, and I thank you for that.
yeah,
Thank you.
and you've been saying that for a long time,
Every
haven't you?
bloody
So, yes, Councillor Calvert, then
Progress. Two things.
Thank you.
The dairy inspection grades, what's the low risk non-compliance? What would I be doing in that area to be low riskly non-compliant?
So, was the definition's not
And
included in
moderate
there?
and significant. I just wanted to get a feel for what those categories.
Included in a previous paper.
Oh, okay.
Probably. We just haven't in the previous paper that we presented at the last committee around the strategic compliance framework. There's a definition of low risk, moderate, and significant non-compliance. But you're talking specifically about an activity on a dairy farm that may be graded low risk. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, I'm just thinking if there was 236 compliance and 22 low risk non-compliance, what sort of things?
So it may have been something that had very low environmental impact or none, or the potential for a low environmental impact. So
if you could just send me through something when you get that definition or something. I'm just like, if I went out of this room and said, isn't it great, we've, dairy inspections, we've done 236 that fully complied and 22 low risk and 6 and 3 who seem to, somebody would say, what do you mean by that? Those, 31 non-compliant ones, I bet they, and we've got no idea whether it was, it's what it means by significant and things, whether it actually sort of was. I'm sort of imagining that the low risk ones are what I might call technical non-compliance.
Yes. Can be, yes.
But so is that they're not actually making a heap of difference. They officially don't meet a criteria, but the criteria isn't something that anybody would be losing any sleep over in an environmental thing. Whereas I guess the significant ones at the other end, and this is just in my head, my guess, are things that would actually be affecting the environment and people would likely to generally think that. But if you could just send me through either examples or the definition.
Yeah, we can provide some clarity on that.
Yeah, it's also part of a national grading system for all compliance. Yeah,
that'll be good.
The report does kind of generally mention what's considered, but it's good.
Just so as Otago Regional Council consents monitored of those requiring it, 52.3%.
Are we back on the...
Sorry, I must have gone backwards. It's just because I went for my...
Oh, so we're back on the previous
yes,
report,
I'm just
the
sort
metrics?
of... Yeah,
so
of the ones who absolutely need it, I'm interpreting that to mean only 52% compared with a national average of 89%.
Yeah.
Query?
Question is... Should we be doing more?
Well, we're obliged to do more by the look of it.
I mean, that's one of the stats in there. So that's around 52% of consents monitoring. I don't think it would be unfair to say that we are significantly behind in our compliance monitoring program. We haven't got the number of visits and audits done over the last few years that had been scheduled to be completed, which is a resourcing and efficiency. The fact that compliance staff are pulled onto pollution response, those are all the issues
that's part of what you were thinking
as part
some months ago that you were getting onto.
The compliance program or the compliance plan will seek to address that, but that takes the number that we have got that are now overdue will take some time to catch up on, but we need to get a plan in place that does that, because the other thing we've got coming is all of the compliance visits that will be required under Plan Change 8 and the NES. So we need to be in a position to deal with those.
So that would turn up in, if an audited risk, we said there was a risk that we weren't doing what we ought to in this area, then that would turn up as, yes, there is a risk, and this is how we're addressing it, and this is the amount of time we're expecting to, and what we need to do.
Yep.
So that will sort of
So for fulfilling our statutory requirements are in the corporate risk register already.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So that
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Councillor
Sorry to go
Forbes, then
backwards.
Gallagher.
Thank you. Good report. It's really clear and easy to understand. The one thing I'm wondering is, again in paragraph 17, so we have all these issues, and we also have further up the compliance and how much full compliance there is. What I'm wondering is how does that compliance relate to the outcomes that we want, and how do we see that? Are we getting the environmental outcomes that we want from that compliance?
So I suppose Rachel might have a bit more detail. My general view on it is that we don't tie together if you want to call it the regulatory life cycle, if you like, in terms of we write the policy, we issue the consent, or in this case we monitor the plan because it's permitted, and then we get outcomes, and then there's obviously state of the environment monitoring and other things, and then we go back. And I think that's something that the teams now, be it policy and consents and compliance, are having a lot more discussion to connect those things together. Previously, and even to a point this year, this is a standalone piece of work, and we go out, we do our compliance checks, we issue some notices, and then we move on to next year. Whereas I think as a organisation, we are now trying to make sure that there is a better connection between this work, the environmental outcomes we're seeing through our state of the environment reporting, or through our compliance reporting, and then feed it back through to the work being done on the land and water plan.
I guess that'll be part of integrating all these things, wouldn't it? And because we need that integration to make sure that the compliance is actually delivering the outcomes that we want.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Gallagher.
Well, thanks. Stuck on 16 and 17, just a technical clarification question. Where you say about irrigating on farms, and then you refer to irrigators, you're talking about irrigators specifically targeted or specifically used for effluent, aren't you?
That's correct. Yep.
And then, so I think maybe just for the uninformed who might pick up this report, on some dairy farms in irrigated areas, they put their effluent out through their pivots, which means that the effluent is actually spread across the entire footprint of the farm, or the everything that's used for dairying. So I just wonder, really, it was just to clarify that, because it could be read in a way, some of the rules around 50 metres from a river or whatever will be different in different places.
Yeah, so it's specifically to make effluent irrigation.
Cool, thank you.
Other questions? Oh, okay. Thanks. Just noting the report moved and second, Councillor Forbes. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, we have then a resolution to exclude the public for us for the matter of Clotha District Council wastewater treatment plant investigation update. So thank you, anyone who doesn't need to be involved in that. Yeah, the reason is section 48(1)(a). Yep. Thank you. Moved, seconded, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Move into public excluded. Great.